patterned textile hanging on the wall. My fibromyalgia and hearing loss can sometimes affect my cognitive processing, and so take me a little bit longer to speak. So I'm using notes today. If you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. So, as some of you may know, I am a writer and poet, and I'm co-director of the Scottish BAME Writers Network. I work with an incredible team across access, communications, writer development, fundraising, and partnerships. So welcome to our conference and our keynote address. Before our keynote speech, I wanted to talk a little bit about SBWN. We're a professional development and advocacy group for Black writers and writers of colour who are Scottish, Scotland-based, or have strong links with Scotland. SBWN was co-founded by poets Alicia Pir Mohammed and J.G. Ying in 2018 as an informal way for writers of colour to connect with one another. Andreas N. Orderica, who is closing the conference today, and myself, we joined in the summer of 2019. And up until 2020, all the programming and admin work was voluntary. But in 2020, we secured funding from Creative Scotland to deliver a full year's programme of events. And that was our pilot year. And my goodness, what a year it was for the world. But back to us. So following our successful run of takeovers with Inky Fingers open mic nights, remember those? It was March 2020 and we pivoted, as many organisations did, to moving online. And this helped us reach more writers across Scotland, from the borders to the Highlands and Islands, which has been wonderful. In the summer of 2020, when many white people were suddenly waking up to institutional and structural racism and anti-Blackness, we issued a call to action to the sector, which was largely well received. We also reflected on our own power structures, and we revised our budget to include more Black artists in leadership roles. Dean Atta joined Alicia as co-director, and we created spaces for Black writers with our Metaphors for a Black Future programme, curated by Martha Adonai Williams and the Scottish Black Writers Group led by Dean. As many of you know, our partnership with Hannah Lavery and her Writers of Colour writing group is one of our foundational programmes. Hannah has created an amazing space for writing, mentoring, and healing. This partnership is still going strong, and yes, there is going to be another audio anthology, and you know it's going to be brilliant. So here we are. We're at the end of 2021. We've continued our successful programmes, deepened current partnerships with literary organisations, and welcomed new partners and projects. Andreas, who was one of our programmers, and Bavaka, who was our admin and media support, both sadly had to move on to pastures new at the start of the year, though they are very much still a big part of the community. I'd been invited to become co-director for this year, and we welcome new team members, Kelly Kanayama, May Dian Sangu, and Titi Farukoye. They each have brought amazing skills, knowledge, unique perspectives, and are wonderful advocates. In amongst so many projects, May started her QTI pop writing group, Titi started their feedback groups, and Kelly has been a huge support with our communications and led our recent Asian Writers Focus Group. So I want to take a moment to give my heartfelt thanks to the SBWN team for all their work this year and their support during a personally difficult summer. They really are a dream team. We've also had a new team member who you'll be meeting today, B. Asha Singh, who many of you already know, who has helped us plan and deliver the conference. So thank you, Asha and Kelly, for all your work on this project. Asha and May are our tech support today, and you'll meet the rest of the team throughout the event. When I started with SBWN, I brought my cravings for a Black and POC writing community, my digital marketing experience, and my passion for lifelong learning and writer development. As a Scottish writer of colour from the African Caribbean diaspora, who'd barely had a fingerful of access to local role models growing up, It took me until my 30s to realise I was always a writer. Those of us born and grown and living here need to see ourselves represented, and the whole population of Scotland need to see us represented across culture and the arts, because we do belong and our stories matter. This community has held my writing soul, nurtured it, soothed me, and affirmed that yes, I too am a writer. I truly believe that SBWN is doing this for many Black and POC writers here in Scotland, and this makes me optimistic for the future of our literary canon. Reading dozens of beautiful, visceral, powerful essays on our blog makes me optimistic too. When witnessing the buds of poems and prose in our writers' groups makes me want to sing to the world. Look at the wordsmiths we have here. Well, we've got so many exciting plans for next year and beyond, and the year's not over yet. We'll continue to listen to our community and nurture our writers and advocate for representation and meaningful inclusion. What you might not know, while we have our various roles and titles, we do try to maintain a non-hierarchical structure and a collaborative way of working. And this attitude of equality is really at the heart of our organisation, alongside the nuances of an intersectional approach. But we don't pretend we're perfect or that we speak for everyone. We are doing this work because it is necessary. We have an amazing range of incredible writers here in Scotland, but this is not yet reflected in the literary canon and the wider literary landscape. We don't actually want our organisation to have to exist, but SBWN is necessary right now, and this work is still needed. We're building on the decades of work by our ancestors, our fellow anti-racist organisations, activists, and change makers. We're so grateful to them and everyone chipping away at creating their art in various capacities and modalities, both personal and professional. I also want to take a moment to thank Creative Scotland for being our main funder for this year, and thank all our supporters, allies, donors, and partners, including, I hope I'm not missing anyone, Literature Alliance Scotland, National Library of Scotland, Edinburgh International Book Festival, the National Theatre of Scotland, Publishing Scotland, Equality Network, MAP Magazine, Scottish Book Trust, HarperCollins, Floris Books, the Scottish Storytelling Centre and International Festival, and all the Scottish indie bookshops and publishers, and also EDI Scotland, who work on our annual survey of the experiences of Black and POC writers in Scotland. Most of all, a massive big up to all the writers who've engaged with us, come to our events, including today, read or written for our blog, shared our posts, participated in our Facebook group, facilitated or led an event, or curated a project. Keep writing. Okay, so our theme for 2021 is staying connected. Today we're exploring that theme through panels and topics of how we can stay connected and to ourselves, to our writing careers, our mental health, our communities, and our creative practices. So I'm utterly delighted to now introduce to you a writer who's a huge inspiration in our community here in Scotland and around the world. Leila Aboulela is the author of 5 novels, including Bird Summons, Minaret, The Translator, which is a New York Times notable book of the year, The Kindness of Enemies, and Lyrics Alley, which was a fiction winner of the Scottish Book Awards. She was the winner of the Caine Prize for African Writing, and her latest story collection, which I have here, Elsewhere Home, won the Saltire Fiction Book of the Year award. It's a must-read. Leila's work has been translated into 15 languages, and she was longlisted 3 times for the Orange Prize. She grew up in Khartoum and moved here in her mid-20s to Aberdeen. So I give you Leila Aboulela.
Thank you, Jeda, very much. And thank you for your very inspiring talk. And my green turban matches your green headscarf as well. Can you see my screen? Because I'm suddenly now able to share.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but
the magic mystery happened.
Suddenly I was able to share, whereas before I couldn't. We were all panicking. Okay.
Great. Well, I'm going to leave you to it, and I'll come back on once you've wrapped up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. When I first started to write, the words poured out of me without control. And I used to, I wrote in my head at the kitchen sink and while changing the baby's nappy. When I had time, I would then grab the nearest piece of paper and scribble the words down. I once wrote a whole page in my head while sitting on the sofa next to my husband watching The X-Files. Needless to say, I was not following anything that was taking place on the screen. The page that I wrote in my head needed neither revision nor edits, and 25 years later, it is still as it is in chapter 11 of my novel, The Translator. I am now more disciplined in my writing and more in control of it. I can go and get the words when I want, rather than them coming to me at inconvenient times of the day. I'm saying go and get the words as if they exist in a place, a particular well I can draw from, a source of creativity that I am connected to. So where is this wellspring of creativity? How do we nourish it? How do we reach it? One answer is that writing is an extension of reading. So this creativity then has grown from my favorite books and from another writer's words, which once took my breath away. And so they've become like part of me, and I've added and I've digested them, and then they're coming out again through my own way of telling my story. So if we look at this idea of that writing is an extension of reading, and then we can think then, who are our favorite writers and which stories move us? I think the reason I'm talking about this and thinking that really it's so important when you're starting your writing journey to know who you are as a writer, and that kind of like helps a great deal and saves a lot of time, because then you are confident of who you are as a writer. So this is a quote from Donna Tartt, and she says, "The books I loved in childhood, the first loves, I've read so often that I've internalized them in some really essential way. They are more inside me now than out." This is one of the books that I really liked as a child, and this is another one, A Wrinkle in Time. It was really much a favorite of mine, and then I moved on to Jane Eyre. There was no such thing as young adult in the 70s, so we just went from children's books to adult books. and I went straight on to Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. So these are books that really meant a great deal to me. And even now, if you've read my work and you look at these books, there is kind of, it makes sense in a way that there's a connection between the family, you know, the family story, the young girl, the kind of spiritual quests that A Wrinkle in Time is going through, again the women's issues and the kind of feminism in Jane Eyre, and then this kind of the Crime and Punishment, this also this idea of spirituality, an idea of what to do under pressure and all that. So what are the books then that have influenced us over our lives, and the books that changed our life, and the books that changed our mind, and then the books that made us want to write as adults? And I think it's also good to have a mix of these books that surround you. So, for example, here I've got The Wedding of Zayn, Tayyip, Salah. This is a Sudanese. This is really Sudan's top writer, and I really love this particular book. And whenever I read it, it feels very Sudan to me. This is Ahdaf Suwaif, who's an Egyptian writer, and her book is about a young woman coming to Britain. And again, this is a theme that meant a lot of me, and this meant a lot to me. And this book meant a lot to me when I first started to write, and I really, connected very much and related to it very deeply. So you need, and then this is Buchi Emecheta's Second Class Citizen. Again, that's really a classic in terms of racism, the treatment of this Black woman when she comes to live in London, the struggles she's going to. She's a mother. She's trying to write. She's also wanting to become a writer. So it's also a book that means a lot to me, and then Abdulrazak Gurna's Admiring Silence. That was also one of the books that resonated with me. Again, he's very much talking about the young man who comes from Zanzibar, and he has a relationship with an English lady, and then he without telling his family back home, and this kind of things very much. These are the themes that interest me. Jean Rees is another writer who the book Voyage in the Dark directly influenced my book, Minaret. So you need a kind of a mix. Doris Lessing, the Golden Notebook, all these concerns with women's issues. So you need a kind of books that speak to you very personally. Also books that you secretly think, I can do that. That's really not such a so wonderful. I'm not so much in awe of this book. I love it, but I can also feel, it makes me feel confident that I can write a book as well. Then, because I was in Scotland, I also wanted to learn more about Scotland, and so I read a lot of Scottish writers, and this is the book that I connected with the most. Robin Jenkins. In general, I love his writing, and Poverty Castle was the one that I really liked. And this is Alan Spence, the Stone Garden, another collection of short stories which I really liked, and which gave my writing this kind of Scottish influence. So here we spoke about the writing being an extension of reading, and here's Mark Twain saying something else. He's saying that experience is the author's most valuable asset. Experience is the thing that puts the muscle and the breath and the warm blood into the book he writes. So that for us is also important, that we are bringing in an experience which is often new, and we're putting it in the English language. We're putting it in Scottish publishing, and we are sharing this experience of our life. And this is the part where it requires courage. It requires that we are actually speaking out about maybe sometimes personal things, or things that the editors we're giving the books, the writing to, don't know about. It's not their personal experience in many cases. So here's a very important piece of advice. Never worry that your readers, your family, or your friends will think that your protagonists are you. Once you start to care about your personal image, you are self-censoring. You're looking over your shoulders, and the writing will start to become stilted and self-conscious. The story is always more important than the writer. Think about that a bit, you know, that this is actually part of the sacrifice you're doing when you're writing. A lot of people think that writing is a kind of an ego trip, where it's me, you know, talking about my problems, but actually it's not, because if you're serious and you're devoted to your craft, the poem or the story or the novel itself is actually becoming more important than you. You know, you are no longer important. You are serving the story or the art or the poetry. So what the reader thinks of the story is more important than what they think of you. So if they like the story, but they don't like you, so what? That's what you want. So I actually didn't find it difficult to learn this lesson. I generally don't care what readers will assume about my personal life, but I know from writing workshops, from working with beginner writers, that this can sometimes be a problem. So it's worth being aware of it. Okay, here's some quotes about writing, and there's many quotes, but I chose the ones that resonate with my writing and that resonate with me, and you will find many other quotes that resonate with you. And it doesn't really, it's interesting that the list of writers that are making these quotes are not particularly my favorite writers or whatever. I do like I like Albert Camus and Alice Walker, but what they're saying resonated with me. So here's Joyce Carol Oates saying, for most novelists, I actually can't see this because the thing is on top. She's saying that for most, the act of writing might be the need to the use to which we put our homesickness, the instinct to memorialize our region, one's regions, one's family, one's past is so strong that without it, many writers would be paralyzed and mute. So she's mentioning homesickness, which to me was a big incentive for writing. I wrote because I was homesick. Here's Albert Camus saying something that's very interesting. He's saying a novel is never anything but a philosophy put into images. And in a good novel, the whole of the philosophy has passed into the images. But if once the philosophy overflows the characters and actions and therefore looks like a label stuck on the work, the plot loses its authenticity and the novel its life. So for example, the kind of philosophies that Jeda was speaking about, that we all care about, the anti-racism, for example, if we need to, when we're working, we need to put that through the images, we have to pass that through the images and not have it overflow the characters and the actions, so that it's not a label. It's not a label that we're sticking onto our work. It's actually something that is embedded and that has become passed into the images and the action of the story, so that the plot has its authenticity and that the words that we've written have a life of their own. And this is something beautiful that Alice Walker is saying. She's saying your caring is actually part of what you're offering. I care, and therefore I offer this. So when we are writing about something that we care about so much, we are compelling the reader also to care about what we are caring about, and that is and perhaps it's something that the reader has never thought about in their life. And then this is something that also means a lot to me. H.L. Mencken saying good writing should afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. So when one person says to me, I find your writing comfortable, I feel happy, and another person says to me, they probably won't say it to me because they probably write it somewhere in a review or something that is disturbing or something, then I feel I've done the right thing. So also think about your aesthetics as a writer. What is your energy? What is your mood? This is a photo of Sudan and the Nile. You can see the Nile. You can see this lady in traditional clothes, all the vibrant colors she's in the sheets she's put on the bed. This is a photo of myself and my family. You can see my little son is here hidden in the back. This is around the time I started to write. So that is really my story is really about this movement from Sudan to Scotland. And then this is some Islamic calligraphy and, you know, my faith, my Muslim culture and my traditions, they are very much part of my writing. So, oh goodness, I'm not able to read that. I hope you can. So this is about circling the same themes. So when you're then, so I feel then that over the years I'm circling the same themes, but at the same time able to write new things, and you know, coming up with new ways of circling around the same themes that I'm interested in, but also growing from that and doing something new while still staying true to my inner preoccupations. So this is from my novel, The Translator. So this is the first novel that I wrote. And this is a quote from the novel, and it's about this young Sudanese widow who moves to Aberdeen, to Scotland, and she falls in love with this Scottish man. And so this is a conversation between them. He asked her which is bluer, the Nile or Nivea tins. She said that colors made her sad, yellow as she knew it and green as she knew it, were not here, not bright, not vivid as they should be. She had stacked the differences, the weather, the culture, modernity, the language, the silence of the muezzin, and then found that the colors of mud, sky, and leaves were different too. And then this is from the novel I'm working on at the moment. And it's about, it's set in the 19th century, and it's about a young girl who's enslaved by the governor of Western Sudan. Her name is Zamzam, and she's actually enslaved by the wife and kind of kept like a kind of a pet, sort of. But then the wife goes away on holiday, and so Zamzam ends up with the kitchen staff who are you know, who are also enslaved. So the anecdote was met with smiles among the kitchen staff, and Zamzam was pleased to be in their company, their toughness and the warm sadness they held inside, their sorrow that seeped out in sunsets and in songs that burst out in nightmares. Many of them shouted in their sleep, thrashed out at enemies. The pain in them was so deep it was almost forgotten. Distant memories of loved ones and homes, those who died on the way, those who were God knows where. They only spoke about the here and now, the silly mistress, the governor who would rather be elsewhere, his baltagiya with their whips, which they could aim at the household staff if they were ordered to do so. So I'm just giving this example because it's the same feeling that in both texts, but over the years, and there's a span of 20 something years between the writer who wrote this and the writer who wrote that. And here now I can see, you know, I've researched, I'm able to write about a character who's very different than myself. I'm, you know, the canvas is wider, but somehow the same feelings and the same preoccupations are there. So where does your writing fit? In the 1990s, I was an aspiring writer living in Aberdeen. I was attending workshops in which I was the only person of color. In those years before the internet, the magazine Wasafiri was my only direct link to the wider world of African, Black, British, and international writers. It was one of the first magazines to publish my work, and it influenced and it enriched me. And the editor, Shushila Nasta, described Wasafiri's writers as those who have not only written across worlds, but also used the power of language to transport the imagination across cultures and beyond the often narrowly defined border of modern nations. And I recognize myself and my ambitions in her words. Through Wasafiri, I discovered writers who thrilled me, and through their writing made me welcome, made me believe that I could write and be published too. People like Joan Riley, Sunitra Gupta, Shashi Deshpande, Anita Desai, Bernardine Evaristo, Carl Phillips, Abdurazak Gurna. And at the time, these were not the writers my friends in the Aberdeen workshop were reading. Wasafiri was a special world ahead of its time. So these are just the covers in which my first piece of writing was included in this one, and then there was a review of my book in another one, and then there was an article about one of my novels in another one. So it was really a place where you know, it felt like a home for me at the time. So finishing off, so identifying your specific sources of creativity is important. We are writers because we write, we fill blank pages with words, and these words come from sources that are unique to each of us. So this creativity is the basis of what we do. And we're told, you know, writers are often told, you know, find your voice, build your author brand, position yourself in the market. And all of these things can sound daunting and overwhelming, but they will, though, fall in place if we are connected to the sources of our creativity. When I started writing my first novel, I wasn't sure I would finish it. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a publisher. I didn't have a creative writing degree or even an English one. I was an immigrant, you know, trying my luck at something new. I was a housewife, excited about my new hobby. I was just a young mom hustling in a second language. And things are different now, but I'm still drawing from the same creative sources, adding to them, building bigger, more complex worlds, having the confidence to experiment, the time to research, but still connecting to the same solid foundation. So thank you very much. And hopefully I didn't take up too much time.
Oh, Leila, amazing. Really, really amazing. Really wonderful that you know, shared the books that have influenced you, and for us to keep hold of those books ourselves, you know, and just talking about your own influences and the quotes that you've gathered, as well as the powerful excerpts from your own work. It's just, yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful way to start the conference.